to do it. Right?
Why is that a bum?
Wait, hold on. Because my mom says I look like a lazy, like, go get some sunlight woman. But, you know, I go out in my PJs too. Right? So this is like the nicest I get, right? Though only twice a week. And yesterday I was feeling myself, so you know I took pictures. I posted them on Facebook. Me and my son.
Nice.
And so the only time I like looking hot and you know noticeable is when I go to the club. Cause
Okay.
you know you got the fine dudes and you want to dance reggaeton and be all up on
The only time you
can't
feel
so
that.
that's the only time, right? No, I know, which sucks, cause I would. But but what I'm saying, but sometimes you know I go to the club like this. But when I go to the club, I like showing a little ass and I got no boobies. But
Okay, you like to
yeah,
show something.
so why is it that at night I'm a totally different person than during the day? What's my conception story?
Well, we're not going to go into that, the whole thing, but what could it be about her evening attire? What's the symbol there? That in the evening she dresses up, and it goes very much in alignment with what we know that she thinks about herself. And during the day, she's non-existent, or she's in her pajamas. What happens at night usually?
The tricks come out and play.
Exactly. And she's evil, she's the devil, she's a prostitute, she's a slut. So
Okay,
of course
Sarah, you
at
do.
night, this is what she thinks of herself when she shared, the devil. So of course she dresses for the part,
Gotcha.
okay?
Now I'm gonna start dressing like a whore during the day.
Perfect.
So I could do the
Perfect, but that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Because what she's doing is honoring the symbol of prostitution. There's our prostitute archetype back there. That happens at night. Sorry, I never understood parents that give their kids like late curfews because bad things happen at night. If your kid wants to have sex, they're gonna do it in the car at 10 a.m. What are you kidding yourself?
It's true.
But that's the symbol. That's the symbol.
It's
The
like
symbol is at night the whores come out.
Yep.
No, it's just like
And
this
that's
has
what you
a
have to live up to.
working hour. It's from 10 p.m. to like.
That second chakra is on fire at that
It's
time.
closed right now.
So that's a very good
Yeah, but-
example of a client telling you a story. You're just listening and you pick up a symbol.
I swear I be want to
Prostitute.
invite her out and then it'd be like, I think I get into an altercation being with her.
With me?
Yes.
Girl, we gonna have fun. You know, we gonna have fun. We gonna get you laid. That.
I
No,
will get into an
but for real, you guys didn't
gonna
meet
be
me
some
when I was 18 or 19 in college. I used to go with skirts that were like up to here. You remember Demetrius? Demetrius, the guy I talked about.
Oh, the guy you were dating?
No, this is the guy I had the hots for
Okay.
in college.
Okay.
So I was dressing for him.
She was dressing for him. So you know that there's a story there. You know that there's a conception story. And now her mother is married to Jesus. If her mother was married to Jesus, if her mother is now married to Jesus, who was her mother married to before?
Her husband? No, I'm just kidding.
The devil.
The devil. And from that, they produced a devil spawn.
It's okay.
So you know
But
that
why
there's
can't
a
it be,
story.
why can't it
Pick
be
up
half
on
and
the
half?
symbol.
I'm getting some trouble.
Why can't it be half and half? Why she can't be in the middle right now?
That's the goal. That's for you to take your client to 48 to 52, of course.
And everybody has.
That's why dressing like a whore in the day is great. Sorry, go
That's
ahead.
right. Everybody has the chance to change their story. So because you have a way of thinking of yourself doesn't mean that that's it. We change all the time. That's the beauty of being human.
And that's the goal of therapy, is that we can get our client to stop thinking one particular way about themselves. That's it. There's one story. They're going to do everything, the way they dress, the way they act, the way they speak, what they study. Everything is going to thread them back to that story. So if you can provide an intervention that helps them to shift that's very cognitive behavioral, then you're changing the thought. What's the next thing to change once you change the thought?
Your behavior.
The behavior. Okay? So giving assignments or giving symbols or sharing a story, this is when you share with a client. So I brought this book. I also brought another book. These are signs and symbols. And I want to start sharing with you guys some so that you start creating a symbol dictionary and you have symbols. That means that you can share these with clients in session. Look, yesterday I had a lady and she had a sexually transmitted disease that she knows her boyfriend gave her because she has not been with anybody. And he lied, and then eventually he admitted it. When you're talking about sexually transmitted diseases, you're talking about second chakra. You're talking about self-worth. Okay, you're talking about issues. That's why I shared the chakras with you in that one lecture, and we'll keep redoing these things. But those lectures are also on the YouTube channel so that you can listen to those if you want. It's a sexually transmitted disease is going to have something to do with worth, because the second chakra has to do with money, has to do with self-worth, has to do with pleasure. There's something that she's feeling guilty or shameful about in relationship to her sexual relationship. And I said to her, it feels as if you're not done with this guy. It feels that you're still not over him. And she's like, I'm not. And the logical thing for the therapist to say is what? To beat him up, you're crazy, what do you mean? He used you, he cheated on you, he gave you an STD.
A therapist supposed to tell you that?
No!
What they naturally would want to say.
Oh, what? Okay.
That's
That's only stays in your head.
Oh, got you.
This is what we're
Got you.
filtering.
I'm like,
So
what
if
the
the
fuck?
client isn't ready to end that relationship, what do you do?
Why do you feel the need of staying with him? Can you ask her?
No, it's not.
You can, but she's already told you she's not done.
Oh.
So you support that client in what she can learn in being with this person. So we started talking about him, and it turns out that he's a heroin addict in recovery, and he's been sober for many, many years. They've been together on and off for many, many years. She's not ready to be done with him.
Because that's her comfort zone.
It could be.
That is definitely.
But if you know that the client is not ready to end this relationship, even though he cheated and gave her an STD, you're there to support the client.
I want to know.
Mejor lo
Well, I
matas
don't-
luego bueno por conocer. That's what she thinks.
Okay, so that's Nellis is saying. Better someone you know
It's
than...
better to know someone that's bad than get to know someone that could be good. So like, you know,
So she could use that.
it's kind of like a mojo that I have, which I'm trying to change because that happens to me a lot.
But that's you being comfortable with just that person.
But there's an assumption there.
Yeah.
And that comes from your own issue.
Yep.
That's
Yeah, I like
you.
comfort.
Okay. So she's agreeing with the comfort, and the statement is comfort.
Yeah, that's what I'm
So
saying.
she might share with the client, and I do this all the time. There's a saying in Spanish, and I say it in Spanish, and then I try to translate it in English, so you could say it just like that. You know that there's a saying like this, and you're giving that client comfort. I had a story in my life that was a bit similar, and I made the decision to share this with her. And it was a very intense story. And she was like, thank you so much. What I did there was normalize her behavior. And she felt comfortable. And later on in the day, she's like, thank you so much for today. Because just hearing, that's when an appropriate anecdote is appropriate. And it was a very private thing. But I knew that it was going to help her. And because the client will tend to have the therapist on a pedestal. So I just said to her, I'm going to share this with you that happened to me. And she couldn't believe it. And it was a similar type of thing. I wasn't done with someone that was bad for me. And she was like, thank you so much. At that moment, she felt validated, she felt loved, she felt heard.
Or normal.
And
she
not
felt normal,
judged. That's
and
the
not
biggest one.
judged. And those are the things that we're doing with clients. At that moment, there was nothing to look at other than the fact that this person needed to know that she was not a weirdo. And all her friends were telling her, what are you doing? What are you, of course, because friends will tell you that because they love you and they want to help you. So I shared, but you could share that saying. You know what? There's a saying in Spanish, mejor conocido que malo por conocer. It means this, this, and this. And I myself have used that in my own life, and you can share something, or you just share that, that's a symbol. And now the client is like, oh, I mean, these anecdotes or these sayings mean that a lot of people buy into this. You know, they're refranes, how do you say that?
Yeah.
Cliches. They're cliches because they're, you know, you might have a client, another client, you don't share names, but you go, you know, I have another client that's in this similar situation, and this is the way that she's handling it. And then what I did was I took it back to her, of course, and because I'm a believer that every situation is mirroring self, does this guy love himself if he's, you know, cheating and he's getting an STD? So is she, if she's attracted to him, if they're together for 9-10 years? There's a self-worth, it's a second chakra issue. STDs are second chakra issues. There's a self-worth issue there. Anything to do with sex, with money, with food, obesity, that's an element of earth we're gonna cover now, and you'll see that in your charts. That's a worth issue.
And using comfort as a definition is kind of a cop-out, because to be with somebody, or to be in a situation where you're not valuing yourself, okay, and then naming it something that makes you comfortable, and that's what people do in general, you know. If you're in a situation but you know that it's not a good situation, we tend to just rename it. You know,
They're used
like,
to it, so I call
oh,
it
we're
comfort.
used to it, right? So I'm used to this. I'm not gonna rock the boat. It's comfortable where I am right now, so I'm not gonna rock the boat. People don't want to rock the boat because they're afraid of the change. But change is getting rid of that fear and overcoming something that will make you better.
And that's a
But
therapeutic
you have
goal
to
you
see
have
it
with
like
that
that.
client.
Right.
It may not be in that moment of the session, but you know where the session is now headed.
And I'm not saying, you know, tell your client, no, that's a cop-out, don't do that.
Right. This is just for you to know.
This is just for you to know, right? Don't say that, obviously, but
So-
just know that that's what people do, and so, what I'm trying to say is I wouldn't necessarily support them when they go in that direction. You know,
Of course.
I mean, if they say, well, that's where I'm comfortable, you say, okay, that's okay then. If that's where you're comfortable, you stay right there. Obviously, we don't want to do that, but we want them to be aware that there are other choices and other things that can happen, and to make them aware that they are not valuing themselves when they put
And that
themselves in
it's a
those situations.
self-worth issue, and you can educate that STDs are exactly that. So one of the things that I did with her was I said, you know, and she's been working with me enough to know my model, is in my theory, parents and partners are the same, it's just an opportunity to do a redo. Which one of your parents didn't value you? Which one of your parents cheated on you? Which one of your parents, whatever question that comes up, and it was her father. Her father mistreats her. Her father calls her an idiot. Her father doesn't think that she's old enough to mature enough to make decisions on her own. He treats her like a baby. So this person continues to make poor choices because she's trying to prove her dad right. Remember, we are always trying to prove our parents right, Miss Devil.
Can I like have a session with her? But I'm a psychologist.
When you're a psychologist, I can refer. Not yet.
I'm mirroring her though, right?
Okay, so what can you get from this situation for yourself?
I really wasn't thinking you would ask me that.
Okay, well, think about it, just for yourself. When cases come into this room and when we do role play, it's not an accident. We don't talk about things accidentally. There's something in you that is mirroring that situation that we're working on. That's why even when we do role play that's fake, that person is really speaking from their psyche. It's not so fake. And that's why every client is a mirror. Yes.
How could you get someone to, because I understand what you're saying by making her aware that, you know, hey, you're not valuing yourself, you're much more worth than what you think you are, you know, all that shebanga. But when you're there, you could be hearing you're a goddess, you're perfect, you're like God's daughter and sent from heaven, and you won't believe it.
And she's not there yet.
And yeah,
And that's
and
all
it's
I could
hard
do.
Yeah,
to
and
get there.
And you're right.
Very,
And it's
very hard.
baby steps, absolutely.
Yes, remember, tiny erection to the box. Making the client aware she's not ready to value herself because she's choosing to remain with this partner who didn't care enough to say to her, hey, I slept with someone and you might have something. No self-worth or low self-worth. And all you're doing is bringing awareness. What I hear, as I told her, is that you're not ready to leave this guy. What I hear is that you are going to continue supporting this guy. So let's not pretend that you're not. And she's like, thank you. Because nobody else in her life is supporting that decision. But I have to go a step further to educate her. Find out her mom and dad, which parent is this, because that's part of my theory, and say, eventually you might get fed up.
And part of this education is to show them where you think this is coming from, but part of that education is also to tell them that it doesn't mean they're stuck there. It means that they themselves have to work at believing they're worthy. Sometimes it takes the homework of talking to yourself in the mirror and saying positive things to yourself. You should try that. If you're in a state of mind where you just think you're a piece of shit, it's hard to look at yourself in the mirror and say, you are beautiful.
I have done that with clients. I have given them a hand mirror in session as they say beautiful things to yourself, and they can't. They turn the mirror down, I can't do it.
Because it's harder to turn something bad into something good versus something good bad.
And so you have to meet your client where they're at. And so that's where I decided to share my story. But I got out of that.
Right.
So as a therapist, I'm showing her I was there, but I got out of it.
So that's another
And all
part.
I did was share a story.
That's part of our education.
Mirroring the intervention, mirroring I was where you were, and I've managed to get out.
What about when they don't want to change? They don't want, like, ever make that step.
That's okay. Remember, incongruence is what you're picking up in a client if they are ready to change. If a client is not ready to change, you're going to find resistance.
But they wouldn't be there if they didn't want to change. Because if you're perfectly fine in your life and what you're doing, why are you going to seek help?
Maybe they wasn't the ones to seek it.
Yeah, like.
Well, court-ordered cases and things like that, you worked with those, right? I did too.
Yes.
And
I did. Court ordered and
you'd be
anger management,
surprised.
things like that.
You can impact those people. I am a believer, and this is what I told her. I am a true believer that people get caught because they want to change.
Right.
And that is a belief of mine, that I don't think people get caught because they don't want to not change. They're tired of holding on to this lie. This guy has been cheating on her on and off for 9-10 years that they've been together. Why did he get caught now?
Exactly.
Something in him, and I shared this with her, is that this is my belief,
9 to 10 years.
is that he's ready He's tired of this dual life. I don't think that people get caught because of sloppiness. No. And I use the example of Lance Armstrong. Lance Armstrong freed himself when he finally came out and talked about his steroid use, and that's when his life began. Are you destroyed? Do you have to rebuild your reputation? Do you have to start from scratch? Absolutely. But I am a believer that we, ourselves, that's Pluto in the chart, when we want transformation, we create crisis in our life. So I must want to change a shitload of things about my life because, man, I have created more crisis than I can handle. But I have to believe that somewhere, amongst all my pain, amongst all my suffering, that I wanted this to change, so therefore I created this. But that's just part of my philosophy. If that's not your philosophy, you're not going to share that with your client, but I did say that to her yesterday. I do think that somewhere the two of you want to change your relationship, whether it's to end it or to stabilize it. That's not for me to decide. And that's why this came up. Because she's known these things about him all these years.
That's
And
It's a long time.
you know, that's part of your psyche and part of your body. When you are bothered by something, just think about anything minute that happens in your life. If it's bothering you, that means it's supposed to come out and you're supposed to do something about it.
Right.
Otherwise, you go about your day. It could be as simple as, you know, I don't know, I could be OCD about my house, you know, and if I haven't like mopped my floor or something in a while and I see like it's dirty and I'm like, that's bothering me, I gotta do something about it. That's my way of, you know, getting something done. And believe it or not, a stupid thing act like mopping my floor calms me down.
Well, it's just like if you have a nail on the bottom of your foot and it's going into your shoe into your foot, and you start adapting and walking like this
Yeah.
instead of pulling it out. That's what your clients are doing. They're adapting to the nail and they're walking like this.
Because they're afraid of what would happen if you pulled the nail out.
So we adapt to our pain. And our job is to say, there's something called a plier. You might want to use it.
Yep.
You can buy it at CVS. And that's your intervention. And the client will decide if they go to CVS and they pull out the plier and they take out the nail. That's the client's job.
Right, we can just make suggestions. Like, how do you value yourself? How about you don't spend enough time on yourself and you start to say no to people? And say, no, you know what, I have this time slot planned already to do my reading or going to the spa or whatever, so no. Instead of changing your plans around and redirecting everything just so you can bless you, just so you can be with, you know, to do whatever this person wants you to do. Sometimes it's as simple as that.
It could be
Just
as
think-
simple. Remember, small erections, small changes.
Yeah,
You get somebody to say no to another person and put themselves first, that is huge.
right.
That is huge.
Or looking at yourself in the mirror. Some people loathe themselves to the point of not even wanting to look at their image in the mirror. So that's a homework
So what you're
assignment.
seeing there is hideousness. What you're seeing is self-hatred. That means that there's some self-hatred at the root of that. And most of us have some level of self-hatred. I'm a believer of that.
It took me, I'm sorry to interrupt,
No,
but it took me my first time going to jail when I had to turn myself in, and they told me that I was pregnant. That right there was like, okay, now it's not about me. And so, and then I fucked up and went to jail second time.
But do you know that when people are going to commit suicide, one of the things that interventions that will be used is, do you have children? Show me a picture.
Mhm.
And when they take out the picture, it's like that person automatically, or do you have animals, do you have pets, someone that needs you. So that's a very appropriate shift in your thinking, where now it wasn't only about you, it was about this other person.
But what if that don't work? Because
And it doesn't always, unfortunately, that's why we have suicide.
But there was a resident that told me about she wanted to take her life or whatever. But what if the children's like there is nobody else? Because I couldn't use her children. I used her grandchild. It's a son. Her and her son don't get along. But she was in love with her She is in love with her grandchild. But what if there's no person, or at least not one we know of?
Okay, that's a difficult thing, and you can ask. You can ask. You sit and you talk about the family and, you know, who is in their life, and do they have children, do you have grandchildren, do you have an animal, do you volunteer somewhere? And you try to find a link with something that they make a difference in. It doesn't always work, but that's one of the things, those techniques. And we're no different in our therapeutic intervention, where we're trying to make a link to the person about a theory, and a theory becomes a reality-based thing. You're taking a theory, whether it's my theory or any of these other theories, and now you're putting it into practice with your client, and you're using little nuggets. And if it means that you get them the shift about taking their life, cognitive behavioral theory, you're shifting their thinking about taking their life to thinking about the next meal they're going to make for their grandkid, you have shifted their thought. And that's a cognitive theory. I would use probably more psychodynamic because that's my thing, or existential. What's the purpose? Each person has a purpose. I am a believer of that. So if you can start talking about this person and what their purpose is. Do you remember that stone soup assignment I gave you many months ago? Yeah. That could be something that you could talk to them about. Where have you made a difference? And start finding threads where they are, where they have created or been purposeful in their life.
And I think that you have to find small things, like when you talk about purpose, you also have to remember, you know, talking about your future and talking about what you're going to be in your life, that might be too much. And your purpose might change from year to year or person to person, you know. I'm a big believer in that we all have a purpose, but it changes, whatever it is at that moment. Tanisha, your purpose might be that, you know, that you have these people talking to you because you're a good listener and they enjoy talking to you and you make a difference in their lives.
You know, some of our good qualities ain't always good to us.
There's a concept called Dharma, another symbol. Hinduism, Buddhism, they believe in a Dharma, that you have a purpose in your life. And like Mr. Pachi says, it changes. How many of you have children? Okay, right now, your Dharma is to raise your children. How many of you are in school? The Dharma is to be a student. My Dharma is to be a therapist and a mother. But really, my mothering Dharma has shifted. And now my main role is to be a teacher and a therapist. And you can educate. This is why learning symbol and learning things is so important. This is why we keep abreast of things, so we can share with clients these things. So I brought just two books. This one is the Book of Symbols, and this one is Signs and Symbols. So I'm just going to open to one page, and we'll see what the symbol is.
Before we move on, real quick, I had every reason to be in this world, right? I had the best grandparents you could ever ask for. I had my mom and dad alive, healthy. I had family that loved me. I had everything. And I probably tried to kill myself more than 10 times. Even though I would tell myself, if that happens, I will be leaving a lot of people behind. And I still did it. So sometimes, you know, there are some cases that it's gonna be, you know, yeah, you might have kids, you